Well, hello, everyone. It's just a couple of minutes before the start of Live at 5. And everybody, I hope, has their notifications turned on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and on our 2 Facebook pages. So we'll wait and we'll just wait. I decided to come on a couple of minutes early just to kind of give you all a chance to join. And then we'll trim this part up for anyone that watches the replay a little bit later. But if you're a regular viewer, we appreciate it. I appreciate it. I don't know who the we is. I got a department of 1 here, a production crew of 1. But this is my office at the ALS Association North Carolina chapter. Here, I'll even move my camera. I have a more unique office than the typical people, just because I was so used to working in a studio setting. So if I turn my camera around, and I know that'll make you, I got a couple of lights there so that we can have good lighting for the whole production. So it's kind of a working studio here. I'm getting some of my guests today, special guests. They're assembling in the green room. I can tell. They'll find that the green room really isn't a green room, and it really has nothing. But they're just set up there in the green room, and we're going to start here in just a few minutes. Actually, we'll just start here in a couple minutes as we get to the top of the hour here at 5 o'clock. But this time, I wanted to give a chance for some of you to join. Now, remember, if you're not new, you know what to do. You can comment below, and I can add your comments and questions below. I'll be able to put those up as well. You might actually have some questions, because I know a lot on my platforms come from the Indiana area, whether you went to college with me in Anderson, you work in Indianapolis now. We've got a very fun show for you today. So if you're new to this is what you do. You can comment, and this is what we do now. At the end of the week, this is how I wind down here in the ALS Association North Carolina chapter office after a long week, and try to do a little something fun. I know a lot of you check it out later on tonight. I see a lot of you watch on Saturdays, so we appreciate it as well. Well, I think we're almost. I'm double checking. I'm missing one in the green room. This is the first time we're pulling off a show with multiple guests like this. So, without further ado, we're going to start this one right now. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. It is Live at 5, and I do this each and every Friday. This is how we wind down the week. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, they say, and it is on the East Coast. So the rest of you are probably at work right now, and we'll hope you'll join us a little bit later on. All right, I'm going to do a very short intro on this one, because I'm going to bring in my guests on this one. As I like to try to do on this, I try to bring some guests from the various markets, the various memories that I have from the past, because they're much more compelling people than I was. But in 1987, it was a turnaround year for me, because I did an internship at WTHR Channel 13 in downtown Indianapolis during that summer. And it was an incredible summer. I got to work the Pan Am Games. I got to work with some truly great people. And I figured out this must be what I'm doing here, as I finished up at Anderson University and went on to a career. But other than a couple of guys that really influenced me at Channel 13, I got a chance to meet some other guys at the other stations. And then into the 90s, as I was in Evansville and Lexington, Kentucky, I was still covering the Indianapolis 500 and NBA games and NFL. And so I ended up running into more and more guys. And it's one of the most unique, I think, complete sports cities. And it had some of the most interesting sports figures as well. You just can't believe the amount of teams and personalities. And I will tell you, it'll be a separate category when we discuss Bob Knight, because we all have Bob Knight stories, including myself, as I saw him later on in his career. One of my guests, he might be able to hear me. His device is not connected yet, but I'm going to go ahead and bring the other guys in as well. One of the guys that I first interned with at Channel 13 that made sure I was pointed in the right direction, I welcome in Daryl Burnett. Daryl joining me from Wisconsin. Right, Daryl?
That's right. Green Bay, Wisconsin, Dave. And, thinking back to your days in 1987 and hearing you describe it, I have to tell you, and I mean this sincerely, the first day I met you, I knew you had what it took. And it was up to us and my colleagues to make sure that you were on that right path. And clearly you took it and ran with it. So congratulations on a great career.
Well, and your colleague, thank you, Daryl. I learned so much from you. Your colleague, Lee Owens, is going to join us here, but I don't think his device is quite connected yet. The next fellow I listened to many times on the radio on the famous Bob and Tom show. And then he went on to do many things, including be over at Wish TV as the sports director there. I welcome in Mark Patrick. Mark, how you doing?
Well, I'm a little jealous.
Are you talking about Daryl's backdrop?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's obvious that he's in Wisconsin, and he must be at the greatest spectacle in Racine.
Mark, it's so nice to see you, my friend. I missed talking to you so many times over the years, but yes, I'm sitting with Mark Dismore's 2001 Delara chassis that started the race on the inside of row 2 and was just 1 mile per hour off the pole. But these days it's going a little slower.
You should tell everybody what you're doing now, Daryl, so they understand your setting.
Yeah, I was just gonna get to that as well.
Well, I'm living the dream, Mark. And Dave, thank you for asking. I'm actually executive director at the Automobile Gallery and Event Center in Green Bay. And this is just one of the 130 plus vehicles we have spanning 113 years. So at this stage of my career, it was just a blessing. There's no other way to describe it. And even on the worst day, it's hard to beat the view.
Yeah, and I want to bring in our another guy who is connected. Lee isn't quite connected yet, but he's around cars all the time as well now. Scott Hoke is joining us, who spent many years at Channel 6 as well. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me, Dave. And Mark, I'm sure you probably feel a little bit better about your backdrop because I have none.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You had a great one, and then you said, I want to make him feel better.
Actually, I did. But the story behind this is that this is the very last anything that I'm going to do in my current residence because I got to be out of here by tomorrow. I'm moving. So wow. My room is literally bare.
And you just put your house on the market at 8 o'clock this morning.
Pretty much, yeah. And it sold at 8:01. No, I'm kidding.
That's where things are going.
It is. And a lot of homes are selling before they hit the market.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Scott, what are you doing now? Tell us what you're doing now.
Well, I'm moving. No,
well, I know you still use that massive voice of yours as well.
Well, thank you, Dave. And I will echo what Daryl said before I tell you what I'm doing. I remember when I first met you, I too was like, man, this kid is sharp and he's going to go far. And you mentioned Lexington and some other places close by. And once you moved away from Indianapolis, it was like, there's that kid again. There's Dave. He keeps coming back. And
I just love that city.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, as we all do. But right now, actually, I'm in my 14th year as the host of the Mecum Collector Car Auctions on NBCSN.
It's a great show.
We love doing it. It's like Daryl says, he's got a great job doing what he does. I've got a great job doing what I do, and we're both around cars a lot. In fact, Daryl's wife used to work for Mecum a few years back. Yes, Daryl? For how long was Kelly with the company?
A couple of years, Scott, and I want to say it was right around 2012, 13, but it was a glorious time. In fact, that's when you and I reconnected after many years. So again, congratulations to you as well on what you've done. And I'm envious of you, being around cars, 2 or 3 times a month in some of these great locations around the country.
Daryl, you don't call, you don't write.
I have tried, but Mark, I will tell you this, and this is the ultimate compliment. I have had the pleasure of watching your son Drew pitch twice in the major leagues, and I guarantee you no one in this group has an offspring who's reached that level. So, and he pitched very well both games that I saw him pitch. So I knew that the DNA had moved down through the Patrick genes because I have seen you play in the past as well.
Was that in Milwaukee?
No, actually Chicago, Wrigley Field. Oh. And then once in, I think it was St. Louis.
You're a longtime Cardinal fan, if I remember.
Lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Mark, a little. I'm going to be moderating this panel discussion, but Lee is ready as well. Let's bring in Lee Owens, who is also. Well, let's see. I have Lee is showing in the green room. Let's see if I can get. There he is. Lee, how are you doing? I think he's frozen right now. All right. Well, we left Lee speechless. We'll see if we can get him back up as well. Mark, we didn't get a chance to find out what you're doing now because you got a nice backdrop there too, and I've seen some amazing handiwork you do too on your Facebook post.
That's it. That's what I'm doing. I retired almost 10 years ago.
10?
Yeah.
My goodness, time has flown.
There's Lee.
There he is. Lee, can you hear us? All right. Lee is on a little bit of a delay there, I think. Lee, can you hear us?
He's frozen again.
Yep. We'll have to see if he can work that out. Gentlemen, I mean, this is a unique thing. To get a chance to talk to you guys, bring you guys together, because as you just said, you guys haven't kept up with each other, have you?
Well, Scott and I have talked on occasion. We text each other once in a while, but I had no idea where Daryl was till I looked him up, because last time I said goodbye to Daryl, literally was in the Bob and Tom studio when he was on his way to NBC.
Well, actually, that's not correct, Mark, because you had me on as a guest while I was in New York one time, I think in 91, but it's been a very, very long time. But I remember that day very well in the Bob and Tom studio. And, for the viewers and listeners who don't know, Mark, how many voices and how much of that show did you provide? You were a critical component to their success and also their syndication.
Nah.
Here, I give you the big build up. And
I appreciate that, but they're pretty good. Bob is now retired and the show goes on. So that made me, it gave me a voice that I never had before. So, and, more important, an audience. It's funny how you can do a lot of things, but if the tree falls in the woods and nobody's listening to your frequency, no chance. So I recognize that for what it is.
Lee, can you hear us? I think we're getting closer to Lee being able to hear us. It is all right. He typed in his name, so that's a good start. Lee, can you hear us?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay, we hear you now.
I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yes.
I think he let Hunter do his setup.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you. Okay,
I'm sorry.
good. Okay.
Lee, tell us what you're up to now.
Well, right now I'm doing the one thing that we all, when we're doing sports, that we would hate to do, and that's sales.
Sales.
I'm doing. I work for a company that does promotional products, as well as apparel, things like that. Swag, and it's been interesting. It's been fun, except when COVID came in, and like an old home week, I missed you guys a lot.
Yeah, you guys all covered so many things. Gentlemen, that's what I was just going to say. Why was Indianapolis, why did it stand out as such a unique sports city, did you all think? Anyone jump in first?
Well, for me, it was, Daryl's sitting on a great example, because no one had a year-round racing scene the way Indianapolis was. So covering that race when we all did it was a year-long event. And then in May, this time of year, you lived out at the track. No one else had that. And I think we were all around the time that the Pacers got good, which really made it interesting in late May, because this is one of the anniversaries. This race would be one of the anniversaries of the first time we had racers and Pacers on the same day. And that was a big day. And then the way high school sports evolved. Basketball was always big. But the Colts became big, and then high school football kind of became big. And then you had two major Big Ten schools within an hour's drive. So you had to take care of both of those. So there's your unique viewpoint as far as any place else in the United States.
And, I'll back that up with Peyton arriving in 98 or thereabouts. And you mentioned, Mark, when the Pacers were getting good in the mid 90s, and then Ball State and Butler were starting to get good and ramp their programs up. So it was just a hornet's nest, really, much to the chagrin of management at each of our stations, who really didn't care, it seemed at times. But this was arguably one of the best sports cities in the country during that heyday. And for us, it was great because it was just before people could get anything they wanted, anytime they wanted on their cell phone. And so for us, it was an opportunity to we were providing a great service to people in terms of, showing them everything that was going on around us. And sometimes we just flat out didn't have time to do that.
Exactly. I mean, just talking about it here and hearing your comments, I think back at one point, I remember Ball State, Notre Dame, Purdue, and IU were all in the top 20. And we would go from one season to the next. As you said, Mark, the Colts were getting better and we were in the infancy. But I think that what really stood out for me was the fact that when we had stations from Denver, Miami, come in, Boston, etc., they were envious of the 12-month sports scene that we had. And as we all know, as good as the talent is at the sports desk, without the content, we're nothing.
Yeah, that's so true. Lee, can you weigh in?
Yeah. I was going to say, I'll even go back a little bit farther when we had all the amateur sports capital stuff just taking off. We had Olympic trials for track, as well as swimming. Some of the biggest names back then were there, and everything. And that really was where, in a test, IUPUI didn't have a track team or a swimming team, but the Olympic trials and stuff like that also made things great. But then things really turned around when we had the Colts move in and other stuff.
Yeah, that's an excellent thing. And some cities, guys, and some cities, they go in spurts. They had it, but it was a consistency in Indianapolis. And many of some of my next markets were Dallas for many years and Los Angeles, where, sports would stay good. But it was amazing what they were turning out there in Indianapolis.
And I think the byproduct of that was part of that was when the NCAA moved its headquarters. That was a big part of it, moved its headquarters to Indianapolis. And we all saw what happened just in March with the entire tournament here in Indiana. And that didn't happen by accident. I mean, there was a reason for that. And it had been building up for a long period of time. And, in my opinion, the stars aligned. Obviously, there were extenuating circumstances, but what better place to have that entire tournament in the state of Indiana?
One thing I've wondered over the years, as we're talking about all these great opportunities, do you gentlemen remember when both the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Chicago White Sox were making innuendos about potentially moving their franchises to Indianapolis? Can you imagine what kind of a city and sports scene we would have had if that would have happened?
Yeah. Do you guys remember Art Angotti and the ill-fated Indianapolis Arrows back in the day?
Yeah. Yes.
That was early 90s, and that was a pretty good push. I still think, Marge Schott infamously said that there would be a team in Indianapolis over her dead body, honey. And I mean, that kind of really killed things off because you knew that the Reds were never going to support it. The Cubs were never going to support it. And the White Sox also were making noise about going to St. Petersburg. I think that would have been beneficial for Indianapolis if that had happened too.
Right.
But as Daryl mentioned, I think that, you know, the White Sox were just playing that off of everybody to get a new park. And, you know, they were actually ahead of the curve in that, unfortunately for them, because now they've got an outdated park.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think there's any way, and no diss on Indy, I don't think there's any way that Major League Baseball will ever be here. White Sox, Cubs, St. Louis Cardinals, Cleveland, Milwaukee, they're all, and Cincinnati, they're all within a day's drive. So why would ownership stick another team right in the middle of all that? I don't think they will. It would be cool. It'd be great, but I don't think it'll ever happen.
What's interesting is we haven't even talked about this. The 4 baseball seasons that I was in Indianapolis, the Indians won the AAA title all 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was another great franchise.
Well, and you know, their AAA minor league park of the year, it seems 4 out of 5 times. So still,
yeah.
Lee, you didn't get to weigh in, Lee.
No, it was some of those players that played then, like Randy Johnson, I think, was with us for a while. And there's some big name players that, you know, I mean, every time I turn on the I end up feeling a little bit older when somebody who was a kid that we coach are doing stuff. It makes me feel old and stuff like that. But really proud, too, to be part of the beginning of all that.
Right.
Yeah, I mentioned guys that, you know, just, I mean, who could have interned at a better time than when the city hosted the Pan Am Games? You know, fortunately, I got lucky and they picked me to back up Reb Porter as the public address announcer there. So Reb gave me all the Spanish name games, so I was an expert at Argentina and Puerto Rico. And
I would have loved to have heard Reb do the Spanish game. That would have been highlight worthy.
He would have been like Johnny Most in Boston. You know, that guy over to that guy.
Dos minutos. Dos.
Yeah. You've just brought up a memory of my past, Dave, and I hadn't even thought about it until you just talked about it. The championship game between the United States and Brazil was on a Sunday afternoon. I had done the Colts game the night before in Detroit, and I wondered at the time, you know, we went where we were told to go, but they sent me on a red eye back to Indianapolis because, as Scott referenced earlier, there was so many things going on at the same time. They needed me to cover the championship game, and of course, the United States had never lost a game. And I remember distinctly David Robinson posing for pictures and signing autographs at halftime because the U.S. was up by such a large margin. And then Oscar Schmidt just came out and lit it up in the second half. And, you know, for many, many years, that was the only time the United States had ever been beaten outside of the controversial Olympic game, you know, with Doug Collins and the USSR. So what I thought was going to be a mundane assignment ended up being one of the great highlights of my career, being able to sit and watch such a show in the second half.
Guys, I want to we're far enough into this show that I've been saving the one group of stories here. When I say Bob Knight, what kind of examples and stories do you all have personally of covering Coach?
I'm not familiar.
Dave, you knew that was going to be
familiar.
You got me, MPOS.
You with me on this, Lee? I don't.
Dave, I'm not sure the has run out yet on Bob's reach, so I have to be careful.
I tell you what, there were no more entertaining moments than being at an NCAA tournament site where somebody wanted to make a name for themselves off Bob Knight. So you get a guy who was there covering the tournament that was a newspaper, usually a newspaper writer from New York. And they would say, "Oh, well, Coach, you know, this game I didn't quite understand. With 7 minutes left, you took Cheney out of the game, and we, you know, what are you doing there? What are you thinking?" And all of us, I think all 4, 5, maybe even all 5 of us at that point went, okay,
Yeah.
here comes the answer. I think we're safely covered under the chairs now.
Yeah.
And he would say, well, I'm sure you know a hell of a lot more about the game of basketball than I could ever know. But Cheney had played 38 straight minutes at that point. And his legs were cramping up and he was vomiting on the bench. But had I known you needed him in the game, hell, I would have had him in there and we'd probably started pressing. Just press the hell out of them.
One of my favorite expressions in that same vein, Mark, was, "You're illuminating your relative lack of intelligence about the game of basketball."
Well, Scott, I learned how to read and write in first grade, and then I went on to other things.
Lee, you asked me if it's okay if all words come out in these stories. Go ahead.
All right. Here is the famous NCAA story. Bob Knight, and I think it was Cheney during the game. He was put on the bench. He wasn't playing well, and then he later got in the game and played well, and they won. And the reporter asked the question, and Bob got theoretical with us. He goes like, "This is what happened. Ass meets bench. Bench retains ass. Ass sends message to body. Body sends message to brain." Really? They're like writing it down. So that was nice.
All the writers?
Oh my God.
Daryl?
Oh yeah.
Daryl, you had yours?
Oh, I had many. One is a visual that I probably can't tell, but I remember the first question I ever asked Bob. And, I had guys like these around me to, coach me. So I made sure I wasn't going to ask him anything that was, off center. So I asked him the question of practice. He looked at me and he said, "That's an excellent question. Did you think of that all by yourself?" And then he proceeded to give me a very good answer, but he had to let me know who was boss right away. And the other one that I would share with you, and I have told this story so many times at speeches over the years, and one gentleman in particular, Mike Breen, who's the voice of NBA basketball on ABC, a good friend. And Mike makes me tell this story every single time I talk to him, but I won't even embarrass the gentleman by saying this, but as you all know, Bob had to be notified days before, in most cases, to be able to do an interview. So we had arranged to do it as the football team was preparing to go to a bowl game. And, the PR director at the time said, "No problem, be here at an appointed time." So we go into a dimly lit assembly hall. And the next thing I hear is Bob's voice ricocheting around all 4 corners of Assembly Hall. The PR director, whom we all know his name, had forgotten to tell Bob that we were coming for the interview. Along with us was a young, and I emphasize young, sports reporter from South Bend. So before the interview, I had coached him and said, "There are 2 things you don't do with Bob Knight." I said, "Number 1, you don't phrase a question in the form of a statement. And number 2, you don't give him your opinion. Stay away from those 2 things and you'll be fine." So as you can imagine, Bob is on fire, smoke coming out of the nostrils. He comes around the corner, he shoves his finger at me and he goes, "When did you call?" And I said, 2 weeks ago or whatever. And he looks at the other kid and he goes, "When did you call?" And the kid says, 10 days ago. Now he's flustered. He's never met Bob in his life. And Bob looks at him and he goes, "You first." And they sit down, and as you know, Bob puts on the lavalier mic and You got to have the lights on and the camera rolling. And the first thing out of this young guy's mouth is, "Coach, you got a tough game with Louisville coming up." I literally turned to my videographer, Steve Starnes, and I said, "The show is about to begin." And I kid you not, I'm trying to give you the visual now. They're both sitting in chairs, and Bob proceeds to not say a word, but he moves closer and closer and closer to this kid until his nose is about a half inch away. And the kid is just all over himself, perspiring and everything else. Bob, beautifully, and Mark, you can probably imitate, leans back in his chair, takes off the lob, and he goes, "Well, there you've got some good stuff to take back to South Bend, don't you?"
Oh, my goodness. Hey, you know what? Now, I wouldn't be a former reporter if I hadn't done a little research. Hoke, you got him on day one, right? Wasn't that your day one assignment?
My very first day as an intern, not a paid employee.
Thanks, Daryl and Lee, not for sending me out there then.
My first day as an intern.
What year, Scott?
1986, summer of '86, and actually, I had shown up to Channel 6, all excited at my internship. I went to Butler. Go Bulldogs.
There you go.
So I show up on day one, and, I'm nervous. I'm 20 years old or whatever, and I roll into Ed's office, and I said, "Hi, Ed. Nice to meet you. What's my schedule going to be?" And he goes, "Scotty, what are you doing this afternoon?" And I said, I don't know. What do you need?" He goes, "Why don't you go out and interview Bob Knight? He's at his golf tournament over on the east side of Maple Creek." I said, "Okay, cool." And so I did. I went out, and that was my first day as an intern.
Hey, it all got easier after that, right?
You talk about the fly hitting the windshield at 100 miles an hour. Wow.
I can remember that because I was working in the promotion department when Hokie was an intern at Channel 6.
Oh, yeah. And I don't think our paths crossed very often.
No, we were talking ahead, man.
Yeah.
Now, hey, look, I tried, and that man is an elusive man. I think he checks his Facebook about once every other year. So I had no chance of actually getting him to confirm that he would be on. So,
Dave, where is Ed, or where was the last place that you knew he was located?
Texas. He was working down in Texas, and I have not.
Waco?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. He was there for a couple of years, and he
still lives there.
He pointed me away. Back in the day to the weekend sports job there at 6. I think maybe it was after you, Hoke. I don't know. I don't remember the year, but he said, "You don't want to be in this business," or something like that. And I think the next guy that came in stayed like 22 years. First, Dave.
That's Dave First.
First.
He took over from my job when I got fired, and Dave just retired and moved on last year, and I was with IndyCar.
Yeah, so I don't take much career advice.
What's that?
You got fired? No.
Yes.
Why? Yeah.
The typical answer in television, we're moving in a different direction.
Yeah, That's not right. Yeah. Now, I wanted to tell you guys my story because, as you guys all well know, I got the last 4 or 5 seasons calling play-by-play for Coach, and you'll appreciate this one. But he mellowed in the latter days, and long after the game, we would get him to go to Hooters in Lubbock, Texas. And he put on the fishing hat, and he'd come in and have a fish sandwich, with us. And the very last game, he said, "Dave, would you go down and knock on the officials' door?" He goes, "See if they want to go out to Hooters with us." And so this I did not know was going to be the next day when he retired, but I knew something was up because he didn't often ask to go out and share some fun stories. But the one night he's coming over to Hooters, and he's about ready to pull up in the parking lot, and Tim Knight, Pat Knight, and myself were in there. And that night on ESPN, which is on every single TV in Hooters, decides it's the night to show the chair throwing incident on every single TV. So the three of us plus the sports information guy are on every chair trying to turn the channel. So it was the only night in Hooters that there wasn't sports on, and Coach had no idea when he came in. we had properly edited so that he wouldn't have to see that again.
You know, Dave, you just bring up a good point. I know you guys have seen the same thing. Every time a network sports person or network reporter came into the market, invariably they would ask Bob about the chair throwing incident. And we all knew if there was one thing you don't talk about, it's the chair throwing incident. And then, of course, you know, things would erupt from there, and they would go back to D.C. or New York or wherever they were from.
Well, he called the first time he was on Letterman after Letterman had gone to CBS. They showed, of course, when he's getting intro, the chair throwing. And he calls me and goes, why the hell did they show that every time I'm on TV? You got it nailed. Just pick up the phone and call Dave and find out.
That is classic. Lee, go ahead.
I was at the game when it happened. It was the strangest thing because I'm sitting in press row already. He and Hightower always got into it. But anyway, night was ranting and raving, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this whole thing, and little did I know that was going to be a big of an event as it was, but it was a crazy night.
So you didn't know at the time, guys. I mean,
I think it was just run-of-the-mill latest thing when it happened. You know, I mean, I don't think anybody around Indiana that had seen him in any setting thought it was that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You guys had so many interesting personalities, guys. Who was the next most interesting personality to you that you covered?
Jim Moore was pretty good.
Ron Meyer had his share of isms.
Ron Meyer was excellent. That was very good. You know, as far as interesting and not effective, Dick Versace was, you know, just looking at his hair and trying to figure that out made for a great interview.
I got a quick Ron Meyer story. We were up at Colts training camp in Anderson one year, and the Colts had just released somebody. I don't remember who it was, and back in those days, it was easy to forget who it was. But it was kind of a little media roundtable, sort of off the record, but just kind of an informal chat. And he said, yeah, we released so-and-so today. And, you know, Chap was there, and I think the late, great Terry Hutchins was there, and I was there, and a number of other people were there. And we started kind of quizzing Ron Meyer on, well, why did you get rid of this guy? Because we all thought, our opinion, that he was a pretty good player. And Ron Meyer said, hey, look, it shouldn't be a surprise to you guys. It's not like I'm Moses coming off the mountain carrying the tabloids. That's exactly what he said, verbatim. It was hilarious.
He was an amazing guy. If you remember, he used to carry around a roll of bills, and he had at least one $100 bill on the outside, and you knew he was serious when he came to the complex in a three-piece suit. And when he came in the sweatsuit and the running suit and that kind of thing, he was one of the guys. I mean, he was into the psychology of coaching that team from the moment he arrived. But, you know, and I asked him one day about the $100 bill. And he goes, yeah, I make sure all the coaching staff does. He goes, this goes back to my SMU days, because he said, I want these kids to know, and I want these players to know that, you know, we're players. We're important people. And he said, if you got a $10 bill on the outside of your roll, he said, you're just another guy. But if you got 100, you know, you've got stature. And I've never forgotten that.
That's classic.
I remember one time with Meyer, He was wearing something. The group, Run DMC. Ron Meyer didn't know what Run DMC was. Something like that. It was something like that he said. It was just kind of.
It was Run DMC, and I didn't catch what you said there, Lee. What he thought it was.
Derek, my child, I think. Derek.
You guys did. Who didn't you mention? Scott, did you throw in yours? You said Ron, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you guys had Reggie Miller.
Oh, well, I mean, the guys that you didn't, just to stay along the coaching lines, I loved Larry Brown. I'm sure.
Yes.
It's a great one.
About 2 days before he was hired, somebody, I think, had it in the paper that Larry Brown was a candidate for the Pacers job. And at that time, I had not heard his name at all. And so I went on the air that night on Channel 8, and I said, Larry Brown is about as likely to take this job as James Brown. And so then, sure enough, 2 days later, he gets hired. And I'm like, oh, man. And that night, my phone rang, and it was like 11 o'clock. It was because I was getting ready to go on. And, I just answered the phone. And, before caller ID, had never had any idea who it was. I just said, Sports, is this Mock? Said, yeah, because this is James Brown. Ah. That was the first time I ever talked to him. And so I said, yeah, I think I'm going to like this guy. That's pretty good. That's really good.
You guys had left the market by that time. Of the coaches who followed, and I always thought, because I had actually been around Versace back at his Bradley days, and so I knew that we were in for a show when he came to Indianapolis, and I just loved being around the guy. And I think we all know that he was just full of stories. Maybe some of them were even true, but my favorite Dick Versace story was this one, and maybe you remember this game. They're playing the Bullets out in Landover, and Wes Unseld is the coach of the Bullets at that time. And, Wes is 6'8", by then about 350. And right before halftime, Wes calls a timeout. Well, Versace just erupts. And he gets in his face, and he goes, what are you doing? Get it to halftime. It was like a nothing timeout. Well, they're going nose to nose or nose to chest, and so after the game, I had said, what were you thinking when, and he looked at me in all seriousness. He said, Daryl, he said, it's true. He said, if Wes and I would have gotten into it, he would have beaten me, and he would have beaten me bad. But you know what? What Wes Unseld didn't know was that he would have had to have killed me. And that was Dick Versace. He wouldn't back down from anybody.
No, you know what, guys, when I thought of this, I just thought of the amazing sports stories, the amazing sports city that it is. I got a couple comments here. Chris Mikoski, who I worked with down in Texas, he said Daryl's setup is cooler than yours. Yeah, Daryl is going to win the door prize that I don't even know what the door prize is, but he'll win that one. Another former colleague, Daryl, this guy, Rick Notter, says hello to all you guys. Rick was there, started inside Indiana there, the Hoosiers.
Rick's a great guy, and he knew me when I wore much younger clothes.
Rick, I worked with Rick down at WFIE in Evansville, my first market, and Rick was the only anchor I knew that did all the segments by himself on a weekend one time. He did news, weather, and sports.
I held the elevator door for Rick twice, and he's obviously forgotten that. So unbelievable. He
remembers you. Mark, I remember listening so many times. What an institution that you worked with there. I mean, who doesn't know the Bob and Tom show, but we knew it as a local show back then, way before syndication. When people would come up to you, what was the most often asked voice that they wanted you to do? What character?
Man, I don't know.
I like Harry Carey, but
well, it just depended on, like I did Harry Carey and Marge Schott later in my years there. Early days, it was different guys or different people. But Harry and Marge late was probably and still probably the most I get asked about now.
Mark,
No.
I'm not trying to put you on a spot, but I believe you actually did Keith Jackson for Keith Jackson, did you not, at one point?
Oh, yeah, that was. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Daryl.
I don't know the story. I just remember that you had the opportunity to do that. It had to be a great opportunity, wasn't it?
Well, Dick Vitale and Keith Jackson were in town for ABC at the time to do what was then a great event. It was Indiana, Kentucky, Louisville, and maybe Purdue. But obviously IU would never play Purdue.
Yeah,
but
Purdue.
It was like AFNB sponsored it, I want to say, and it was at the then Hoosier Dome. It was a great. They get 40,000 people in there for a doubleheader, and it was awesome. So Dick Vitale
Notre Dame. Wasn't it Notre Dame?
Might have been, Scott. I can't remember. I think you might be right. But Dick comes on with us on Bob and Tom on that Friday morning. The game was going to be on Saturday. And so, I was doing Keith Jackson with Dick in there, and he goes, "Hey, baby, you got to do that for Keith. You got to do that for Keith. Come on." He goes, "Meet me at the Canterbury at 11 o'clock. We're going to a promotion meeting. I'll have Keith come down to the lobby, baby." So I said, okay. So Dick and I go down to the Canterbury, and we're standing in the lobby. And Dick goes, "Hey, there you are, baby. Hey, come here, Keith. And Keith Jackson is, I'll never forget, sitting there in a trench coat, and it was December, so he looked as disinterested as possible. He was watching a train on the display they had going around the Christmas tree. He's just watching. Just looking at that. And Dick is, Dick Vitale's 1,000,000% on as always. He goes, "Come here, Keith, come here. I want you to meet this guy. This is unbelievable." He goes, and he literally comes over and says nothing and just looks at me. And Dick goes, "Do your Keith. So I said, "Hello again, everybody. I'm Keith Jackson. Which one was it? First one broke the eye on Dick Vitale, you better believe it. Oh, it's going to be a grinder tomorrow. You get the big old horses in there, Mr. Bob Buck. It's going to be rambling and booming and rumbling and stumbling and go those horses." And he didn't even breathe while I was doing this. He's just looking at me. And Keith, of course, Dick is going, "Oh, isn't that great, Keith? Isn't that unbelievable? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard." And he just looks at Dick, and then he looks back at me, and he goes, "For a guy that says he sounds like Keith Jackson, he doesn't sound very much like Keith Jackson." And that was it.
That was a resume moment right there, Mark.
Yeah.
You got the raving endorsement from Keith Jackson.
Pretty proud. Had the cold floppy sweat going on, And, "Hey, you ready to go over there and see what they got for us?" I'll tell you, I put that in my book, baby. And they're, those two, Keith is still not saying anything, just both hands in his trench coat, just walking across the street. Looked over at Chick. I said, "Well, I think we're done here."
Oh, I'm sure Chick loved that one.
Oh,
I never had the opportunity to meet the man. Do you think you were just catching him on an off day, or
no?
No,
From
that
what
was
I heard, no.
that was him, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
No,
Too
no.
bad. Because you were spot on with so many of the impressions. It's I've always wondered, did you feel that television constricted you when you went to Channel 8, or did it open up doors for you because you then had the visuals to go with the voices?
I thought it limited it in a way, because what people end up doing is looking at your face and going, it doesn't look like Keith Jackson there. So if I were doing a voice on Channel 8, I usually was doing it over video.
Okay.
And then something else was there, and then people could more, they would imagine what that face was that went with the voice more so than looking at it.
Guys, we have before we wrap up, this has been a really fun show, but we had a question from one of our regular weekly. Beth wants to know, for all those watching out there, how did you guys find your way into the sports media world in terms of colleges and the specific broadcast program? Because we've got a lot of parents out there that watch this as well. Who wants to jump in first? Lee, where did you learn the trade?
I went to a technical high school in Des Moines, Iowa, and I took a broadcasting course there, and I got a internship at Des Moines show. And when I was graduating from high school, they offered me a part-time job while I went to school at Iowa State. And it was just serendipity. I spent 4 years at Iowa State. I was working part-time in the business, and I got my first job in where else? Indianapolis, Indiana. So very blessed, very fortunate, but a good school. All of us have our favorites, but I would say a good school like Iowa State, where you can get a good broadcast education from instructors who have been in the business. That is the key. That makes a difference.
Yeah, that was the difference. Scott, how about you?
Well, very similar to Lee, actually. I was a sophomore at Ben Davis High School here in Indy, and totally lost as a 16-year-old, I guess. And my guidance counselor said, hey, her name is Rosie Leedy. She said, hey, you need an elective. And I said, okay. She said, you've got a nice voice. Why don't you try this radio class? And I said, okay. Still clueless, So I'll never forget, absolutely remember this like it happened yesterday. Walk in the door, and it's the introductory radio class, and they've got a thing over here with a couple of turntables and a mic, and a thing over here with a couple of turntables and a mic. And I just thought it was like Tim Robbins in Shawshank Redemption, just going, this is cool. And I worked at the high school radio station, WBDG, did all sports, and worked with Kevin Gregory, who is still a meteorologist at Channel 6, and then was hired 2 weeks after I graduated high school at the old WIRE. Back in those days, I was one of 12 news people at the radio station, which is unheard of anymore.
No one has that.
And then, nobody has that. Very few stations had it, even back then. And then I went to WFMS and then did my internship. And oddly enough, Mark, when you were in promotion at Channel 6 and I was interning at Channel 6, I was also the booth announcer at Channel 4. So,
yes, I remember that, because I was doing, eventually I was doing, a couple of years later, a late night movie show on Channel 4, and you were hey, here's Mark Pumphrey.
Yeah, exactly.
See, look at the tie-ins. Mark, what about schooling for you?
I didn't go to college. I went to Ball State. But when I was 14, I was a bat boy for the Indianapolis Indians. And there was a new station that went on the air, WNTS, News Talk Sports, owned by Jeff Smulyan. And it had, I think it was a 50-watt station, huge, flamethrower. And David Letterman was doing middays. And I would call him and do Dick Nixon. And it would just lay there, But I thought Letterman was amazing. And then he would come out to the Indians game and, after his show, and he would come out and he'd just be sitting there. He'd come a lot by himself. So, I felt it was very important to let him know that was me that was on his show. And he would just give it the, oh, is that right?
Kind of like Keith Jackson did, right?
Yeah, everybody's impressed. Everybody's impressed by my work.
They just can't get enough of you. And you know what? That Ball State one made sense because when I went to Anderson, which was college until my last year was changed to university, but we thought that was our library over at Ball State because no one was attending no one was using the library over at Ball State. So we just went over there and used it.
It's just kind of a high school with ashtrays. But so
Daryl, how about you and your background, schooling?
Dave, I think you see a theme here that right place, right time, right breaks. That was the case for me too. I grew up in a small town in Illinois of 600 people, and LA and New York were about as close as the moon where I grew up, and from the age of 7, all I wanted to do was be in broadcasting. And I started working in high school in the Explorer Scout program at the mighty WBYS in Canton, Illinois. The signal barely got to the city limits, but that was the hook that told me, well, maybe there's something here. And went to the University of Illinois Springfield, where they had a 50,000 watt radio station. And I thought, gee, the big rocker in town must have really great studios. If we have a 50,000 watt station here, I got my first commercial job and I found out what it was really like. And I thought, I want to go back to college where we actually had equipment. But, it just snowballed from there. And really the big break after University of Illinois Springfield was I got a job in Rockford, Illinois, and did the Chicago Bears Today show. About the time a guy by the name you might have heard of called Peyton showed up. And the rest, just snowballed as it did for all the gentlemen on the panel here.
No, that's fantastic. And you guys are still doing great work. Daryl, how do we stop there and visit up there? And what do we find at the museum?
Well, anytime you guys show up, lunch, breakfast, and dinner on me, maybe even hotel. We entertain visitors from all over the United States. We have about 20,000 people a year come through, but no one more special than you guys. I can't tell you what it's been like for me to just reconnect today, and I'm really excited about staying in touch. But we're open 7 days a week, and would love to have you come up to Green Bay. We're about 8 minutes from Lambeau Field. So it's just, again, a true blessing for me at this stage of my life and career that anyone still wants me.
Well, you got Daryl brought up an interesting point just to go back to the broadcast advice. Yeah. One, I came out off my 40-year career with two things. Free food tastes better and you look better in free clothes.
Mm-hmm. Beth, I hope that helps all the students out there.
I think it will.
I will add to that. I remember having interns. You obviously interned at another station, Dave, but we had a number of interns at our place. And I've told the story 100 times if I've told it once, but along the same lines of what Mark said. I don't care if you know how to write. I don't care if you know how to edit. I don't care if you are the best interviewer on the planet, if you play the game, whatever. Your goal in this job is to get as much free stuff as you can. Jackets, hats. And I think I've given all of that stuff away over the years.
Did you pay for that Butler shirt?
I did, actually. Yes.
I know if you want something new that you get printed up, I know someone here on this panel that could do that, right, Lee? We got name on anything, right?
Over there?
That's right.
Gentlemen, to tell you how dedicated I am.
Right.
I was once given.
That's exactly right. Yes, exactly.
Go
ahead, Daryl.
I'm sorry. I didn't know if you could hear me or not. I said, as we're all talking about swag, one time by the U.S. rowing team, I was given an oar. And the dedicated guy that I am, I still have that as if someday I'm going to be out sculling and I need a single oar. My wife looks at me like, you're still holding on to this? But it was free,
If they ever have a circle race, I think you'll win.
I got to share this one story, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but the Indianapolis Ice used to do some of the best promotions for their team of anybody.
They did.
And their version of the Stanley Cup was the Turner Cup for a little while. and I think they were in the International Hockey League maybe at the time. Anyway, I don't remember who the PR guy was, but
Ray Compton put all that together.
It was Ray and his team, and I'm not sure if it was Ray's idea or Brad.
It probably was.
Okay. Anyway, whatever it was, they actually sent out to everyone. The ice colors were silver and black at the time. They sent out to everyone a brassiere, and they called it the Turner Cup, the Kathleen Turner Cup, something like that. And they said, "Here, guys, come and cover our hockey games." And that was one of many, many things that they did that really got your attention. They were really, really effective at, saying, "Hey, here we are. Give us a little bit of time on your air."
Scott,
guys,
get you arrested today.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
100%.
Guys, you were very kind with your time. I hope you had fun. This is what I wanted to do for everybody to wrap up a week, because a lot of times we just lost touch. You all meant a lot to me, and it was fun working around some of the most professional guys that I knew.
That ought to be enough for your little show, I hope.
Oh, that is classic.
He's not coming back.
There it is, the classic.
No.
Bob
How
Knight
many hundred times did that happen to Chuck Marlowe? That's how the show would end, with Bob walking off.
Yeah, before the end of the show, just out of here.
Yep.
Guys, thanks. Mark, go back to making some amazing furniture and all kinds of things for your basement there. But Scott, Daryl, Lee, it's been a treat, and I'll share this link in case you want to share it with anybody as well. But we've had a lot of fun, and Scott, we'll watch more auctions, I'm sure, coming up, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Come and see us. We're going all over the country still. Thanks, Dave.
All right. You come to Raleigh, North Carolina, or anywhere near, I'll come see you, okay?
You got it, man.
You ought to be coming to Chicago. Right?
We're in Chicago a little bit later this year. That's the plan.
Okay. We got to get you guys in touch with each other. Guys, thanks so much. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to remove you guys. Thanks so much for the show. Mark with the famous exit right there of Coach Bob Knight. Folks, I hope you had a good time. I know some of you are in other areas of the country, but a lot of you are from the Indianapolis, Anderson, Illinois, where I grew up area. I hope you had a lot of fun. We do this just to have some fun. I didn't show you my latest purchase. I got some 1990 unopened Topps baseball cards. I just bought a box because you know what? The gum isn't good in it, but the memories are. I don't even care what they're worth. But every so often, it's kind of fun to open one of those when we end the show in future weeks. Hopefully, we'll get someone from the business world, music world, anything coming up on Future Live at 5s. Thanks so much for joining me. Oh, and I will tell you about a big ALS event that we're going to have that I'm going to kick off with my walk team. I'll tell you about that coming up next week as well. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a blessed weekend, and be careful wherever you are. Thanks so much.